Okay, so this is how I was able to do the placement. I had posted on Zillow, and the hit was through Zillow, but it was through a corporate company. He had reached out, he called, and he explained to me his situation and circumstance. And essentially, the industry, which was construction, operates a lot similarly as healthcare. And it was one of those things where it couldn't hit you in the face any easier than it did. And it really did. And he was like, look, hey, I see you have a property for rent. This is what we need. And that's how I did it. It took us all of 3 days to go through go beyond the initial conversation to completing the application, submitting the deposits, the security deposit and rent for that month because it was mid-month, and walk through. And I want to say we talked on a Tuesday and the people moved in on a Saturday. So some things to think about. We offered a furnished home. We offered all utilities included a furnished home. We did require a deposit and an application. And with corporate clients, it can look a couple of different ways because from that experience with him, more corporate housing types of clients came through the pipeline. It was construction management or construction at a big site in the area that we were in. I was familiar with the site. They were looking to place individuals who were doing a certain type of work at that site for a 6-month period or longer. It's a big project. It's a resort, so it's a big ongoing project. And they were a vendor, that won, whatever portion of the project. And they had people coming out of state, which was North Carolina, so that's right below Virginia, to do the work. I'm just assuming some of this information I don't know fully, but they did have guys working on the site for North Carolina who were staying in hotels. So just like what many of us do who have been travelers, sometimes you go stay in a hotel for a couple of days so you can check out the area and find out where you want to stay. I think these guys, it was about 6 to 10 guys were staying at a hotel probably more than 30 days. And as we all know, those costs can add up really, really fast. So they were looking for a house, which made it a lot easier on the company as well as the people working to just be there for as long as they needed to be there. So what we ended up doing and what we agreed to was a 6-month lease. And then after the 6 months is month to month. So of course, I did my comps in my area. I created a price point that made sense and covered the expenses that I had. The nice thing about having a mortgage is you know how much, or even living in the home, you know how much everything costs. Some factors I will tell people to take into consideration is some companies include like an amenities or utility fee and things of that nature. I wanted to make it as simple as possible, so everything in the rental price included all of the utilities. We have a fairly older home, but in that area the utility costs weren't really high, so that's something that I would definitely take into account. For the most part, the people who are renting it work from 6, some version of like 6 to 5, 6 to 4. So it's not like if you had someone staying at your property that was maybe like a remote worker, which I'll probably talk about in another video because that has been a request made for that particular house. But you want to think about all of your expenses, right? And then there's tons of websites that calculate it for you. They'll tell you what other corporate housing situations are going for in your area. They'll break it down per night. So I use a very simplistic model, which was essentially the per night rate that they were doing at the hotel with a little bit of extra on top, and that's how I came up with my rate. I will say try to be competitive, but also, just like I say with getting your first contract, everything is negotiable. So could we have charged tens of thousands of dollars? Probably. But was it fine that we didn't? Yeah. Because this then becomes my first corporate housing client, which means he'll be a referral. And then after the 6 months, we renegotiated a much higher rate. So you want to think about the longevity of the relationship when you do it. The other thing to consider too is some of the dynamics, right? So the corporation or the project manager who I talked to was a person who was my point of contact, and they wanted to essentially have it automatically come out of their credit card, pay it up front, things of that nature, which is good for you as an owner. You want to get your money the easiest way you can get it, with the least amount of hassle. So those are things that we discussed, and it's a part of like that. I'll drop the link below the system that we use. It's the same system that Furnish Finder use. And they help with creating a lease. They help with the payment, even the emails that go out and kind of say, hey, your rent is due, da 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 da. So finally, we did do a walkthrough. So we did do a walkthrough with the guys that are going to be staying at the property. Kind of gave them a little welcome packet to talk about things in the neighborhood, in the area. Our intention at the 6 month period, or the 6 month end of the lease, is to actually do another walkthrough, and then that way us as owners can kind of know beyond the regular wear and tear of the house what we may need to replace or fix and things of that nature. And then the last thing to really consider is the change of weather. So where we are in Virginia, it went from like winter to spring and summer and fall. So you want to get in and make sure that you kind of get the house geared up for those transitions in weather that may bring about whatever, and that there's an awareness of any potential problems, like kind of planning ahead. And then the last thing is, part of the lease was that they would cut the grass because we have a front and backyard, which is fine. And then we aren't offering housekeeping just because not everybody likes housekeeping. I'm one of those people, when I stay in hotels for long periods of time, I don't really like too much housekeeping. So what I would do kind of in future corporate rentals is definitely offer an option for housekeeping, and then offer the option for the grass cutting. So those are things to consider. Check out my next video where I talk about how I did the rinse and repeat method, and we're working on it now for the second property via a different method referred to as rental arbitrage, to capture the rest of the corporate clients that have reached out about that property in